All right, thank you very much for attending No More Small Talk, using holiday parties to expand your business. Speaking now is Ellen Laverne, that's myself, and my co-host, my co-presenter is Michelle Talbot. We came up with the idea for this webinar when we decided that we were being asked the same questions frequently. How did you build your network? How do you network to get the success that we've gotten? And we also been asked, how do we meet some of the people that we know? And once you're being asked the same question a few times, you have to then package it, because now we have a resource to send people, and we also like to share our information. That's part of networking, is being able to share what you have with other people, and that's what we enjoy doing. So thank you very much for attending today. We're going to get into the presentation now. Michelle, we're good. You can see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you can tweet at us at Michelle Talbot or at Ella Laverne, and you can also use our hashtag Network in 2015, Network in 2015. We appreciate any social media love out there, because, again, like we said, networking is about being social. So we definitely always will be on those platforms. Who we are: I am the Director of Operations for Mentor Monday. Mentor Monday is an online community. We have Spreecasts, which are which happen once every 2 weeks with different guests. It's about socialization as well. Basically, we get into how to conduct business. We also have Michelle Talbot, again, who's the co-founder of They Met Online, which just in the title lets you know. Hey, Michelle.
Yes, ma'am.
I can hear you typing.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. They Met Online, which is basically networking. They Met Online is two people who were in a romantic relationship, and they met online, and then the relationship did not particularly work out, but they made that work for them with books and a podcast and different online and offline products that they have. So that's who we are. And we both get to meet very cool people in our daily walks of life. We'll get into that a little bit later. Why do we heart networking? We heart networking because we both had regular jobs, and Michelle was a lawyer, I was a call center supervisor, and I worked on project management for call centers. And not only did social media or socialization or networking really become our passion, but it became the thing that fed us. So neither one of us work in corporate America anymore. We both work our networking jobs, our social media jobs. We both met people through networking that are now social media clients of ours, or clients in real life, or we have different levels of clients, but it's our networking that's got us there. And I'm just going to get into how I met some people now. That's Michelle and I at Blogger Week, and again at an event with that startup. Both are networking, in real life networking events, where Michelle would introduce me to different people, I would introduce her to different people, and we, of course, if you go with somebody you know to these events, it's better to expand your circles, but it's also good to get out there into the social realm of things and mix it up. And that's what you're doing with your holiday parties right now. You're going out and you're trying to expand your influence, trying to have a little fun, but you're also trying to expand your influence, expand your social business, expand your reach, and for those who can help you, and also for those that you can help. In my network, there is Paul C. Brunson, who I work with on my Mentor Monday. I've also worked with Kimberly Seals Allers, two producers from Geraldo. One who's a really good friend who always invites me to social events. I've met Essence Writers, got gone to blog conferences where I've known not only the attendees but the creators on a personal level. I know branding coaches. I know people with Black and Married with Kids, the founders of one of the largest African American websites there is. I know Issa Rae, Levy Ajay. I have publicists in my circle. I write for Black Enterprise. I know the Senior Vice President, Alfred Edmond Jr., who I work for as well. Basically, with my circle, I'm not only 1 degree from Oprah, I'm several 1 degrees from Oprah. Paul C. Brunson has worked on her network. Kimberly Seals Allers has interviewed as a senior editor, has worked with presidents, first ladies, Oprah. She's worked with a lot of different journalists. The Geraldo producers, both of them have met Oprah. I know Mike Street, who works for Oprah. I know I used to work for Good Enough Mothers. She worked with Oprah. I mean, I've met so many people who worked with Oprah, and actually I went to see Oprah recently as a media contact, which I got through socializing. So I'm going to give you an example of what one of my biggest wins was when I went to an in-real-life event and made a social connection that worked out where I not only gained business, but a friend and a mentor. Excuse me. Kimberly Seals Allers, who's one of my connections, like I said, she's a senior editor at one of the hottest magazines, or she was. She's now Mocha Manual. She does breastfeeding. She does all kinds of different things. I was going to an event where I didn't have a ticket. I had an extra ticket, and I didn't have someone to go with me. And it was a networking event. It was something I had to do I got the tickets for free, so I really wanted to give the ticket away. So I went on Twitter to find out who was going and to let them know that I had an extra ticket if anybody wanted it. So as I was going down the attendee list, or people who were tweeting about the event, Mocha Manual was on there, and that was Kimberly Seals Allers. So I just happened to see in the back of my mind, I had never met Kimberly. I had never even reached out to her on social media from what I remember. And I said, oh, she'll be there. You know, I've read her book. I loved her book. I mean, her book was so funny at some point I couldn't even talk. And I mean, that's not even an exaggeration. I couldn't even talk, so I really loved her work. And like I said, I wasn't really following her on social media, but I saw she would be there. So I didn't get a chance to give the ticket away, but what happened was I sit in my seat, I'm there alone, I'm having a good time, and who walks in but Kimberly Seals Allers, and she's in the seat next to me with her date or her companion. And so if I hadn't known, I would have remembered her face, but I wouldn't really have remembered her name. And I know that for sure. Like, it's one of those things where you just know in your mind, you're like, oh my gosh, if I had not looked, I would have never known. So we struck up a conversation. Of course, we had intermissions, which is kind of tricky. You know, you're sitting there with somebody that you don't know. She has somebody else she could talk to. I'm a huge fan of her work. What do you do? How do you, maximize that conversation? So what happened is I ended up talking to her, letting her know who I worked for at the time, letting her know I was a writer. I like to edit work. If she had anything for me to let me know. And, of course, I followed up with her later, and I wrote an article on her site about breastfeeding once. And then we kept in touch. We had lunch. And then one day she needed a content editor for her site. I ended up doing that work for her. So that's how I took a simple tweet, one tweet that I saw, and converted it into an opportunity to do work for somebody. And Michelle will tell you the different steps I used in there. The part about going to Twitter and finding out who's going to be at an event is going to be in a bonus package that we're going to send to you guys. So the content you're getting today will all be about making social connections or making networking connections at the event, but before the event, there's a little bit of work that you need to do to make the most out of those connections. So we'll send you that as part of the thank you for attending today. So those are the connections. That's one of the connections I made, and that's one of the examples of something that you can do. So now I am an author or speaker, and this all honestly came out of making one connection. I've grown different connections. I've gone to different events. As you become ingrained in a culture, you do certain things. And I know that now every event where I go, I have to network. And not only do I network, but I make sure I make the most out of every experience, because every time I do it, I get bigger and bigger. And so now I'm the producer for Mentor Monday, which is, by definition, a networking event. And one of my biggest claims to fame is I've been to Disney World 4 times in the last 3 years as a networker. They bring us down there to network, to blast out on social media who we are and what we're experiencing, but at the same time to go down there and meet other influencers so that we can build a community for Disney to tout their products. So that's something amazing. And the fact that I've built a community that networks on Mentor Monday, we have a community that has a live chat and we network. And as we've built, those connections have become stronger, whereas people are actually working together now. So I know a little bit about social media networking and how to make those connections work for you. Now Michelle's going to give you a couple of examples from her experience.
Thank you so much, Ella. We are so excited to have you join us today. I apologize in advance. I actually caught a cold overnight, so hopefully I will not say anything funny, because if I laugh, I cough. So welcome again. This is sort of the backstory for you, those of you who are not familiar with my story. And it's funny because I know lots of folks who are on the call are actually because Ella and I met you either online or offline, or you've met other folks and you've been able to get the information from folks who we've met that way. So in the beginning, I was actually an attorney by trade. I graduated in 2003 from law school and went into corporate practice. I've always been a helper, though. I've always been someone who wants to help other people. And in terms of going to school later in life as a parent, you know, I really had a heart for single moms, and it was just always about helping. Well, anyone who knows, you know, lawyers are always considered sharks and, you know, are thought to be so cold and callous. And I really had that pull. And around 2009, I decided I'm going to try my hand at motivational speaking. I didn't know what that was going to look like. I just know that, you know, for over 2 decades, I've listened to motivational speakers, Tony Robbins and so many others, even, you know, in both the secular world, the religious world, Joyce Meyer. And it was just something about seeing them on stage and hearing their message and how they can share their story to help others. It's always been a pull for me. So around 2009, I decided I was going to try and see what motivational speaking looked like. So I joined the NSA, which is the National Speakers Association, went to their conference, their national conference. I met Les Brown, had a really great opportunity. Valerie Burton was there, and I got to interact with her. And actually, I'll take one step backward, because even at that moment, that was an opportunity to do in-person networking. So this is around 2009. We, outside of college campuses, right? Facebook was probably blowing up around college campuses and ebbing its way into, you know, the rest of society. Twitter was on an upswing with the rest of society and stars, and we all knew Ashton Kutcher was on Twitter by then. And when I went to NSA, before I got there, which is actually part of the bonus that we're sending to you as a thank you, I saw who would be there, who were some of the folks who I could make contacts with before I even got to Phoenix. And so I reached out to Valerie Burton and set up a time. We looked at the schedule that the conference planners had sent out, and we identified a time where we could spend 15 minutes together. So that meeting was set up weeks in advance of our arrival on the ground in Phoenix. And that is something that, you know, we want to let you know that's a key to being prepared for when you're in person with someone. So I went to Phoenix, like I said, met with Valerie and Les Brown, and really felt like I had found my tribe. And I wanted to begin speaking. I didn't know what it all meant, but I was consuming information, just like you guys are here, which is really important to always sort of pour into yourself and learn and grow and develop and hear how others have done something. Podcasts at that time were gaining in popularity as well, at least among speakers. At that time, they were sort of thought to be a place where people could share their message. Apple really did a big push with podcasts right around 2006, 7, 8, 9. And so speakers were getting on the bandwagon because they know that that's a great audience who Apple already has their credit cards. So if they want to make a purchase, they can make a purchase right in the app. So that was some marketing tidbits that were shared at the NSA as well. So I recorded 3 paltry episodes of this podcast called Dust Off Your Dream. And I talked about my journey a bit. I even had my kids on one episode. And, it was fun, but I just kind of let it go. I also joined Twitter at that time. I didn't know how I was going to use Twitter, but people said do it, so I did it. You know how it is, right? I know folks of you out there who we get all this information coming at us. You need to be on Instagram, and if you have a business that is, has pictures, you need to be on Pinterest, and you get all this information, and you join all of these platforms, and you're not even sure how to use them. So I didn't take a very focused approach and just sort of let that die. Well, something else was dying that year, unfortunately, and that was my second marriage. So at the end of 2009, the demise of my second marriage, I, moved out, was on my own. Around 2010, 11, I decided I'm going to try dating again. In 2011, I was online dating, and I met a gentleman by the name of Ricardo, and he was cool. And if you know any of our backstory, as Ella alluded to earlier, Ricardo and I met, had this whirlwind love affair, and broke up. And it ended in heartbreak. We won't say whose, but we know it was his. And we went ahead and parted ways. And I guess he reached back out to me, and for the ladies on the call, men always come back, but I digress. He reached out to me, and, we became friends, those kind of friends. But as time progressed, I realized, I really like him as a person, and he really liked me as a person. And we realized we had like 20 years of collective knowledge with regard to online dating. So we decided as friends, no benefits, we're going to write this book to help other people online date because we're a font of knowledge. So we self-published our first book, which was called Don't Do What We Did. And I would suggest you not do what we did, which is not be truthful in your online dating journey. So I went back to Twitter, because I knew I had set up this Twitter. It was lying dormant for, 2 years, but I knew it was out there, and everybody said, if you're a self-publisher, you need to go ahead and be on Twitter because that's a great way to connect with folks. Now, that was an online presence and an online strategy for marketing the book, and I'll come back to that one quick second. I also want to say that I am a writer, and so for me, it was important to always be continually honing my craft. And so I was doing in-person writing workshops and networking in the literary world in New York and DC and finding out how to be a better person, just like all of you, or a better writer, better person, I don't know about all that, but a better writer. And just like you're on this call, like I said, pouring into yourself to get information. I am a consumer of knowledge and information. I always want to know as much as I possibly can before I make my next move. So in one of those writing workshops, which was here in the DC area at Marita Golden's house, who's one of my mentors in writing, there was a woman who was presenting named Ananda Leak. Some of you know her as Digital Sisterhood, and amazing, amazing sister. And she and another sister talked us through the self-publishing process and really helped me understand what that would look like with regard to this book that Ricardo and I were pulling together that year. So in person, I made contacts with folks in the room, and we exchanged Twitter information. Some of us also became Facebook friends because we had these interests in common about being writers and authors, and in some cases self-publishing and trying to find our way through marketing. So Marketing 101 on the fly, take back to Twitter. Leave this last writing workshop armed with these @ names and go ahead and start following these people immediately, and we begin connecting with one another. And all I can say is I am a Twitter devotee. I love Twitter, so hallelujah Twitter. Next slide. And with regard to Twitter, next slide please. So like I mentioned at the top, I'm a social maven. I enjoy helping people. I enjoy giving people information. I enjoy watching other people succeed. So with this semi-social media marketing strategy that I had and just bringing my own personality to online interactions, I was able to combine the offline strategy of continuing to hone my craft and meet with people and go to coffee and, if I met someone at a workshop and we wanted to continue and we lived in the same, area, we would go have coffee and exchange ideas and be of service to one another. And all of that activity garnered an opportunity for our book to be featured on ebony.com. Because I was out there tweeting and talking about online dating, and I was, putting little snippets of the book out there and telling folks, weighing in. And then people knew, well, Michelle's in the dating world. So if they saw a question, they would say, well, my name is Black Love Rules on that side. And they're like, Black Love Rules, what do you think about that? And, interaction. Now, I know I'm going to put a pin in that just for a moment because I know that sometimes it's very overwhelming. People feel that social media can be very consuming. And what I will say is that although I didn't have a very good strategy at the outset that was, I had a good strategy in that I knew I wanted to interact with people. I didn't know all of the sort of levers and pulleys. And you don't have to interact with everyone in real time at that moment. You will sort of, burn out if you try to do that, and that's not something that you're well suited for. It is perfectly fine to check into your social media platforms 2 or 3 times a day and respond in that way. Now, of course, there are times when, some of you may be familiar with tweet chats and things of that nature where there's a live conversation going on by hashtag, and that's a very different situation. You can carve out an hour and say, I'm going to spend an hour online on Twitter interacting with these people about this topic in my area of expertise, and that's a bit different. So anyway, my offline strategy and online strategy came together, and it was a wild card, right? So it's activity meets luck. We got into Ebony. I was totally in love with social media at that point. But again, like I said, I was now expanding my offline activity to include business activities. So I went to things such as the Doreen Rainey's Get Radical conference and Lucinda Cross's Activate conference, and again, meeting people in person and then continuing those relationships online. Even some of you on this call, if I'm honest, I'm not sure whether we met online or offline first. There's a saying that says, some of my children are adopted and some of my children are biological. I've forgotten who's who. And that's really the same thing when you have this organic community where you have these online relationships and offline relationships. As I mentioned, I've studied humor and interaction for over 2 decades, both formally and informally. And in the digital age, even though this today is actually a call about in-person contacts and networking at parties and events that are face-to-face, we're giving you such a robust background with regard to social media because we want you to understand that they don't interact in a vacuum anymore. There may be some people who just because of geography, you may not meet, you've met online, you interact online, you conduct business online, and you may never meet face-to-face. But more often than not, if you go to an event in person, someone is then following up, especially if you've given them your card and you've made an impression based on some of the things we're going to talk about in a minute. They're going to check your LinkedIn. They're going to check the Google. I call it the Google because it's on the interwebs. Anyway, they're going to check Google and find you, your LinkedIn. They're going to check the website that's on your business card or all of the above. Everyone in this day and age has to have a digital footprint, and your presence needs to be strong online and in person. You can go to the next slide. One thing I will say with regard to the online and in-person presence is that you want to be the same person. Now, I'm sorry, can you go back for a second? Apologies. I'll go back to the other slide for a second. Sorry, I think it got pressed too many times or something. So in terms of your online presence and your offline presence, you want to be the same person, because I have met a few people who, I'm going to harken back to our online dating side, my online dating hat, where they're awkward. They're socially awkward in person, and they're just so gregarious, and they're this wonderful personality online. What I will say is that be you. If you're not really a very outgoing person, I mean, there are ways that that can show through online as well, but you really want to have congruence between who you are online and offline, because 9 times out of 10, those worlds are going to merge for you. So now, next slide, please, but only hit it once. The success, or the appearance of success, begets success. And what do I mean by that? Okay, so we had the opportunity in Ebony, and I was still out there tweeting. And then people came to us both locally and across the country and said, hey, would you come speak at our on our radio show, which is us there, well, not us, but that's me there, with Harold Fisher, who's on WHUR and Sirius XM. And now you can press once, please. I attended conferences for bloggers, both in the relationship sphere, and it just snowballs. So it starts as this snowball, and then stop, don't touch, and then avalanched. And it culminated with me having an opportunity now. This was 2012, and those are Trayvon Martin's parents and their attorney. I was able to attend an event in person to cover a political matter, right? A personal and political matter. Because again, I had interacted with folks, both online and offline. They started seeing me at conferences. I had the same persona that I had online in person, so they felt comfortable recommending me to other people to then interact with human beings in an environment that's out there, which is why I take the time to stress, whatever your personality is, be that online and offline. Next, just press once, please. So in 2013, we launched the podcast, and our podcast is called They Met Online. And I continued to write and realize that, I am both a businesswoman in the relationship business of love and business, right? I love business and technology, and that really, you can press once again, please, and then, that snowballed into additional opportunities. So again, there with my girl Ella, that's Ricardo and I now write for Black Enterprise, had an opportunity, Tiny Lister, Paul Brunson, there's a bunch of folks, and I even met a shark, right? Okay, so stop. I want to say to you that in each opportunity, like I said, these are hybrids of online and offline activities. So I could post something online that a follower might see on Twitter or Facebook, and then say, Michelle would be great to speak at that conference. And that happens all of the time. I know, Ella, that happens with you as well, where we're not even front of mind or present of mind, but as soon as we post something, someone says, oh, I see a fit. I see the synergy there. And every time they would send me out or ask me to attend and I was able, I would perform well. Right? And so the organizers would be pleased, the person referring me would be pleased. I mean, this is all, common sense, but we just want to really put a fine point on it because, again, it's this hybrid of online and offline. So I had a business coach who always used to say to me when I was networking, when we were networking, she would say, when you go out and you meet folks, don't lead with what you do. Try to get them to tell you what you do. Because I don't know about you guys, but if most entrepreneurs, I know I have this issue. We have entrepreneurial ADD, right? So we want to be a hairdresser, and we want to write books, and we want to create products, and we want to, do all these things, and motivational speaking, and have a daycare. So when we go to an event, we don't know which one is the business that this person may need, right? What's the business that's going to resonate with this person? So my business coach's perspective was, if you find out what the other person does or identify a need for the other person, then you can quickly switch into whichever one of your hats meets that need. Now, I'm going to say in full disclosure, I can't do that. I'm not really good at that. I don't tend to lead necessarily with what do you do, but a lot of people do. So I find myself that I'm answering that question first. But I give that to you because if you're able to sort of navigate that water as effectively as she is, definitely give me a call and let me know what your secrets are. But That being said, even if someone asks me what I do first, I'm able to give a very broad definition of what I do, and I also take cues from the environment in which we're in. If I'm at an event where there are lots of singles, I'm going to lean toward the they met online side of things, right? The side of things with love and relationships and dating. But if I'm at a business event, if I'm at Black Enterprise, if I'm at Women of Power, I'm going to talk about social media content production and you know, the things that I do with regard to writing for business and tech. So you can take those kinds of cues. The other piece is that when they tell you what they do, I mean, really try to hone in and hear what they're saying. There's something called selective attention, and we're going to drill down into this when we talk about the steps that you take when you're in person. Selective attention is something that we've all experienced. It's basically when you buy a car, all of a sudden you see your car everywhere. It's because it's now in your conscience and it's been pulled forward in your conscience. Well, the same thing can happen when you're interacting with folks and you begin to see synergies. So I'm going to say that now and then we're going to come back to that. Now, as Ella, I don't know if you heard, we probably should have done a drinking game if this wasn't at noon for how many times Ella said Oprah in her presentation. Press the slide, please. So, of course, I had to bring my own Oprah story, right? Now, I didn't get one step closer with regard to maybe knowing Oprah, but in that little yellow circle there, that's my cousin and me, and we are at Oprah's Life class. And again, that was an opportunity that came about because of online activity. It was really one of those things where someone said, hey, Michelle, did you see? And I jumped on it right away, and there were opportunities to get tickets for free. Obviously, to her life class, you don't pay. And then the next thing we know, we were sitting up front. So again, that's sort of that wild card factor that I was talking about, where activity meets luck, and, you know, it's a beautiful thing. So next slide. And I'm going to stop here. Ella, I don't know, do we want to ask if you have questions? We've turned off chat, but you can raise your hand if you want to ask a question. I think Raven has one unanswered question. Do you see it, Ella?
No, hold on. No, I don't see any questions.
Okay, so maybe she doesn't. I thought she did. Okay, no worries. Okay. So I'm just going to go forward. Sorry, I just wanted to take a moment and again, just take a little sip because my throat is starting to give out a little bit. I know a lot of people do that. It's really, they say, oh, do you have questions? And that's really that opportunity to take a quick sip. All right, so that's sort of, you know, my background and a really sort of high-level discussion about how online and offline networking has ebbed and flowed with regard to my life and business and how it's evolved into something that really has provided me with amazing opportunities, both personally and for income generation. Ella, did you want to add anything now before we go into the approaches?
Oh, no, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So on this call, for the remainder of our time together, we're going to talk about the 4-step approach to networking in person. So we gave you the background. We told you why it's really important to have an online presence. We're going to focus now pretty much completely on offline interaction. So you can go to the next slide, please. Is it? No. Yeah, the next slide. Okay, so with the identify, approach, give, and get out approach that we talk about, identify and approach, I've collapsed into 2 here because identification will really be part of that bonus that we're sending out to you after the call, but that's sort of that pre-work that I mentioned with the NSA convention in terms of finding out ahead of time who are some of the scheduled speakers, who are some other scheduled attendees. It depends on the type of event that you're attending. Some event organizers publish that information to attendees prior to getting on site. Some give it to you when you get on site, and others don't give it to you at all. So you just kind of have to adjust that way. But the more information that you can be armed with, the better. Also, going back to the conversation, the very first conversation that Ananda Leek and I had at that workshop, she also is a yogi, and she teaches yoga, and she's very much into setting intentions. And it was the first time that someone, you know how you kind of know things, but you just don't know until someone says it, and then it just, like, all the pieces click together like a Rubik's Cube. And she said, set your intention before you even register, right, for a conference, I would say. But, she said, set your intention. Why are you writing this book? Set your intention. So for every action that you take, set your intention. And with part of that, identifying, why are you going? What is the benefit to you? Because I know sometimes we just go to stuff because it's like, oh, I might meet someone there. But if you're strategic in your planning, if you think through, what is my intention for going to this event, especially if you're paying money to attend an event? And honestly, even if the event is free, if you're going, that's time that you're taking out of your business to go and interact. So you would want to have a good reason for being there. And it can be, I just want to meet two other people in my industry. For me, oftentimes I say if I walk away with two good connections, and good, we're going to talk about that qualification, what that means. If I walk away from any event with two good connections, I feel like a total success. So set your intention, do the pre-work to the extent that you're able to maybe get an introduction through an organizer because you know the organizers. Whatever you can do to identify why you're going, who's going to be there, how will there be synergies and benefits. And that goes into the approach. And by approach, now we're talking you're there. You've signed in, you got your little crudité on the plate and your wine in the other hand, and you're still trying to figure out how you're going to hand out business cards with your hands being full. We've all been there. Now it's time to, based on the work that you did before you got there, you now know who you would like to meet. Now, in the instance where you're not able to get information ahead of time, you can at least identify the types of attendees who you think will be there, or in the event of speakers, if there are speakers who you want to be sure to catch their eye or get in touch with their handler, depending on how big of a speaker they are, you want to come in armed with that information and know why they should want to interact with you as well. So next slide, please. So your approach is that you're going to introduce yourself. Can you go back, please? You're going to introduce yourself. You're going to lead with what it is that you may have in common. And I guess I'll give an example of a situation where I was able to do that. And that is I had an opportunity, so I had an opportunity to finally meet Paul Brunson face-to-face at an event. Now, we had been working with each other online, and we had done a few things, but this was the first time we were actually going to meet in person, and we were interviewing him for our podcast. Now, 2 years or a year and a half before that, 2 years before that meeting, I had met Paul, but I'd met Paul as an attendee of one of his events. But it so happened that he asked a question of the audience and came over with a mic for me to answer, and my girlfriend snapped the picture. So for me, I thought, wouldn't it be fun to show him, hey, I was at your event 2 years ago, and look, here's a picture. Now, that's something that Paul remembers to this day, like, wow, it's sort of like your life coming full circle. And in that instance, it showed that, number one, I cared about, what it is that he was sharing with the world with regard to relationships, and I showed that I supported him, and that was a give, right? So that's a way that you may be able to introduce yourself to someone that maybe you've attended one of their prior events, or you've read their book, or you know someone who knows them, because immediately now you are on their radar as someone to connect with. So when you approach, you lead with the synergy, you lead with that piece, and then you give, you continue to give. You tune in, and remember the selective attention piece that we talked about earlier. You tune in to what it is that they're talking about. I love to ask questions, and again, this is depending on how much time you have. And that's why we call this No More Small Talk. Because a lot of people say, I hate going to networking events because it means that you have to do small talk. And and then they list whatever letters they are on the Myers-Briggs, and this is why I can't network. I need deep interaction. And I can tell you that I've had deep discussions, interactions, connections, and made from that moment forward to this day business contacts off of a 3-minute conversation. It can be done because you don't lead with the weather. You lead with a connection that you already have. You're approaching this person because you want to give, right? You want to become a part of their circle. You want to help them. Now, of course, we all know the whole levers work, give and get, but we focus on the giving because you'll get, and reciprocity is not always reciprocal. And what I mean when I say that is that I may help Babs one day, and she may never help me, but Raven may come and help me. And that's what I mean by reciprocity is not reciprocal. You don't always get back right from that person, but that selective attention, which if they're a good listener and if they are someone who is getting the similar type of training that you're getting today, they're also tuning into what you're saying about what you do and what some of your needs are as well. And then you begin to say on your radar screen, hey, I may not be able to help this person, but I know that Ella does that. Ella has one client who she's worked with because I interacted with that person at an event and said, oh my gosh, I have the perfect producer for you. It wasn't about me in that moment. And that person and I have never then worked together, but we're in one another's circle. And because Ella's awesome, she's indebted to me, for the future. So this is not an ask. This is about learning more about them. And 2 things that I want to say before we move on. And you see, we're spending a lot of time on the give because the give is really where you're going to set yourself out as special. Because everyone else is coming up, cramming their business cards into someone else's hands and saying all the things about themselves. You're coming from that perspective of, you know what, your book changed my life. I did have that opportunity. Kathy Black, last week, I was at an event, and I didn't even know she was in the room. And I was standing up to speak with the presenter after his presentation, and Kathy Black walked up next to me. And Kathy Black, for those folks who don't know, she's the former president of Hearst Publication, as in the publisher of Old Magazine and loads of other publications. Well, maybe 5-6 years ago, she wrote a book called Basic Black, and it was for women in corporate America. And it was around the time when I was struggling with this whole thing about being an attorney versus being a motivational speaker, and it's like that whole there's no crying in corporate life kind of moment, and her book changed my life. Never in a million years did I even think back to that book until boom, she's standing right there. And I had an opportunity to say, you know what, Kathy, your book changed my life. And she said, Michelle, what brings you to this conference? How may I help you? And I told her how I may help her as well and how I would love to connect. Now, nothing may ever come of that. Who knows? But that was an opportunity to give. And she told me, she saw me hours later and came up to me and said, hi, Michelle, I really appreciate what you said. And she remembered my name, so I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that these kinds of shift in our focus really can resonate and just have exponential benefit in our own lives. Now, back to the small talk piece. Okay, so what if you don't have 3 minutes? If you don't have 3 minutes and you have a time crunch, give them your business card. Maybe put a little note on the back of the card about what that synergy is, if that's all you can do. And also note that with regard to business cards, more and more techies don't have business cards. And the reality is you can find them. When they say find me online, do it. Email them right after. Make that connection, and then talk about something that will trigger their memory of you as well. Back in the day, I've had a couple of iterations in careers, and one of the things that I did was residential residential real estate. And my son laughs at me because to this day I actually put my picture still on my business card. And that stands out because you get so many different business cards, and now for some reason they're getting tinier, and people are giving you small business cards, and it's just like, who was that person? I even once emailed the wrong Stacy because I met two Stacys in one conference. And so putting my picture on the card, yeah, it seems like a little I love me, but you know what? Especially with tech events, I'm going to be quite frank, I'm one of very few African American women at those events most of the time. So they look at my card and go, oh yeah, that was that sister I met who blah, 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 whatever, fill in the blank. So again, I just want to go back. Whatever your Myers-Briggs may be, you can network. It does not mean that you're having small talk. Now, conversely, it does not mean that you hold someone hostage or let someone else hold you hostage. Next slide, please.
Actually, Michelle, can I say something real quick?
Sure.
One of the biggest gives I've ever given is just saying to like a speaker who's inundated with a bunch of people, just to tell them thank you. Thank you for coming to speak to us today. Thank you for sharing your time. I don't want to hold you up. Here's my card. And then you follow up with them later. These events, some social media events, some events, conferences, whatever it is, you're inundated. You wake up early, you're speaking to a lot of people, and the person might not even be a people person, and now they're tired, they're cranky. Holiday parties are at the end of the day. People are drinking. They want to, kind of enjoy themselves with their hair down. So the one thing you can give them is to give them their time. Saying, I really wanted to meet you, but I understand we're at a busy event. I just wanted to give you my card real quick, let you know that you've impacted my life. If we could talk about this later, when we are both, have more time, that's a big, big give. And like I said, when I've seen speakers, I've just said thank you to them and let them go about their business without, giving them too much more conversation. And it really works. I mean, it makes you stand out because, most people do, like Michelle said, hold them hostage. So those are if you don't have any other give, like a picture, or you don't have any special thing, a thank you and a move away will actually set you apart.
That is so true. I mean, what is it? I think it's Mark Twain. I love quotes, right? So Mark Twain has this quote, I would write you a short letter, but I haven't the time. Sometimes being short and sweet is much more strategic and makes a much more lasting impression than droning on and on. And that leads us to get out. Now, what does get out mean? Get out means that you and this person have connected. You don't want to be held hostage. They should not be held hostage. And you now need to extricate yourself from the conversation. Do not scan the room looking for other connections while they're talking to you. That is just 101. I know sometimes these things seem like common sense, and I don't mean to offend anyone on this call, but it is yes. Can you hear me?
I don't know what happened to Michelle, and I don't know if
can you hear me?
Live,
you can't hear me.
But
you can't hear me.
What she was going to say is there's a lot of people in all these rooms, and we want to connect with everybody. Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you didn't hear anything about Get Out?
I don't know what's happening with her audio. So there's a lot of people in these rooms that you want to get to know, you want to get to meet. That's how they get you to these events, right? They pack them full of people that you want to know. And everybody obviously wants to know who you are too. You might not be a big name, but everybody wants to know. So, but when you're in a conversation, be present in that conversation.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, I think I turned it down. I might have turned my mic down. Is that okay? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm sorry. Go ahead. You can finish.
Okay. So I was just saying that I'm sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought. But when you're making a connection, just make sure that you're present with the person who's in that connection, because you could be looking for the next connection when this person is giving you the gold mine to their connection with you, and you miss that link for the two of you to work together while you're looking for the next link. Don't be in there trying to find everybody. Try to find the best few somebodies and then make the most out of those connections. Go ahead, Michelle.
And so what I was saying was, do not scan the room for other connections. Could you hear me say that before or no?
Yeah, I covered that part. We're on the next one.
Be polite.
Mhm.
And be polite. I mean, I think you've pretty much covered be polite and don't scan the room, right?
Mhm.
Confirm and move on. Confirm the connection, the synergy that you have, whatever that unique value proposition is that you brought, which is really that synergy. How is it that you can be of service to this person? And one thing that I saw once that really had a big impact on me was an episode of Oprah, when she still had the talk show. And Tyler Perry was on the show with Gail as well. And they were relaying a story about Tyler Perry purchasing a Bentley for Oprah. And the gist of their story was that in a certain turn of events, Tyler Perry had actually bought two Bentleys, one for Oprah, one for Gail, but Oprah's arrived first, and Gail was so happy for Oprah, and that made such an impression on Tyler Perry that Gail would be so excited and not even realize that, she didn't, quote unquote, get blessed the same way, but she was so happy to see Oprah be blessed. And that stood out for Tyler Perry. But what stood out for me was Gail's reaction. She literally started crying on the show because she said how no one or very few people give to Oprah. Because it's one of those situations where they feel like, how can I give to the woman who is, richer than God? What can I give her? How can I do anything for her? And in that moment, it made me realize that at the end of the day, we're all people. We all respond positively to someone offering us a hand. Now, does she need me to loan her $10? No. But does she need that thank you after she gives a presentation like Ella mentioned? Quite possibly. So there are ways to not be intimidated, and the reason I say that is to say this, is to not be intimidated about approaching people who seem or feel out of your league for one reason or another. And it's also to confirm that you can have synergies with people of all walks. And, to really make an effort to take the steps, to do the approach and the pre-work and the give and the get out, and really put this into action and practice it with people who are when we apply to law school, they say apply to a safety, apply to a stretch, and apply to someplace where you'd never get in, because you just never know what would happen. And you can take that same approach in your networking. So for me, that's it. We are at 12:51. Ella, I know you have some thoughts to add, and I did try to send messages to people who had their hands up, it looked like, to ask a question. If it's correct, it looks like Johanna has a question and Raven has a question. I'm not sure, though. If you can press the raise your hand button on your keypad to confirm that. I sent each of you individual messages. So hopefully that works. If not, you can definitely email us. Our emails are here at the end. So apologies if we're not able to see the question that you have for the benefit of everyone. Ella, do you see the questions?
I don't. But you can always send us, we'd love to continue the conversation online. I see Babs is talking to you in one of your invites on Facebook, and I already sent her a Twitter response. So if you guys want to leave us questions in Twitter or on Facebook and use the hashtag networkin2015, it's right there on the slide, we can definitely continue this conversation. We're really excited that you want to continue the conversation, because it means that we've given to you something that you can actually use. And Jonna and Raven, I think, are both people that we both know, so we definitely want to make sure we get those questions answered.
Okay.
So do you have anything else, Michelle?
No, we hope that this was helpful to you. We would love feedback, because we can always, there's always room for improvement. We would love to hear from you. And we just appreciate you taking the time to spend this time with us. We want to be respectful of your time. So we said an hour, and it's a little under an hour. So thank you so much. This is really a joy, and we really appreciate you. And look for the bonus in your email as well later on when we send our thank you. Have a happy holiday season.
Thank you.